everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood's Star of the Week. This week's Star of the Week is is a person that many of you remember from the 1970s. He was a big hunk. He was in a lot of quirky films from the 1970s. He was really good looking, and he had a very tragic ending, and his name was Michael Vincent. And Jan was the quintessential hunk, 70s hunk with his shoulder-length blonde hair and his surfer style, his carefree Southern California wild boy attitude. Unfortunately, that wild streak ended up taking over his life and ruining his career. So he's initially not born in California. He was born in Colorado, and he came from a very interesting background. He had 3 uncles and a grandfather who were on the other side of the law. They were bank robbers and counterfeiters, and one of them was even shot by a Tulare sheriff's deputy and killed in the 1930s. So he came from that kind of background. His father was the opposite. He was a military man and very disciplined, and also a harsh disciplinarian as well. So they eventually moved to Hanford, California, because this is where his parents originally were from, at least his father. And Jan went to high school, and then he graduated high school and decided he was going to go down to Southern California to Ventura and go to Ventura College. So he went to Ventura College, and just as he was about to pay for his tuition for his final semester, the lady closed the window, and he got frustrated and decided to take his $200 tuition money and go down to Mexico and party for the rest of the summer. So this became a sort of a running thing with Michael Vincent, that he would choose partying over being serious and actually applying himself. So when he got back from Mexico, since he didn't have a job and he wasn't in school, he decided that he'd try his luck at acting, because everyone kept telling him, "Oh, you can be an actor. You're so handsome. You can be an actor." And it was true. He was really good looking. So as soon as he went down to Hollywood and tried to get into the acting field, he got, parts right away. And I find it ironic that one of the very first parts that he got was in a movie called Bandits, given his family background. So in the late 60s, he signed with Universal, and he began making quirky, kind of offbeat indie films, but they were hard-hitting films, and they really showcased his acting ability. And he became known for a few of these films. His first quirky kind of film was called Tribes, and this is where he played a troubled hippie-type teenager who was drafted into the army, because that's what they did back then. Because of the Vietnam War, you got drafted, you didn't enlist, usually. And he came face-to-face with his worst nightmare, which was an unbending drill sergeant. And conflict ensued. And it's a poignant film as well. And one of his more memorable films, comedy film, he was starred as an alcoholic teenager in World's Greatest Athlete. And that's kind of what he was. So he was kind of playing himself in that film. In another movie called Buster and Billy, he actually did full frontal nudity in this film, and it shocked everybody, which is kind of sad, because the movie's really good and takes a look at a certain type of person and a certain type of community within our country, and the bigotry and the prejudice that exists within this community. And I feel that his full frontal nudity act kind of probably distracted from the overall quality and message of that film. And he is also distracted from his own performance, which is actually really good. He was really good in this film.
Listen, how about a date this Friday night? Pick you up about 8 Friday?
Billy. He put in another fine performance in another sad, poignant, aimless teenager looking for a purpose in life film called Baby Blue Marine. He plays sort of like a fraudster who is dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps for poor behavior or something, and ends up in a town where nobody knows him. But because he's got his uniform on, and it's the only thing he has to wear. They think that he's a war hero from the Vietnam War, and they treat him like a war hero, like he's special, and he just sort of goes along with this because he really has no place else to go and no one else to go to, which gives it an extra edge of poignancy. I thought he was very good in that film as well.
Beer, please. 25.
And then, of course, one of his biggest movies was the surfing film, the ultimate surfing film, and this was called Big Wednesday. This made a big cultural impact at the time. It had Gary Busey in it as well in one of his first roles. But of course, John Michael Phillips was the standout hunky guy, partier, careless person, careless with his life, careless with his choices. And this all took place against the backdrop of the draft and the Vietnam War, when they were all expecting to get their numbers called up at any time. It's a coming of age film, one of the best coming of age films that there is, and in my opinion, he did an amazing performance in this movie. And I think that a lot of people, if they don't remember him for Airwolf, they do remember him for this movie, Big Wednesday, which you can still watch on YouTube, I think. And it's kind of hard to relate to now, but back then it was a big, big movie. So, as we know, he moved into the 80s, and he, because of a few of his successes in films, including Winds of War, another really good movie of his, and also he did a memorable movie with Charles Bronson in The Mechanic. A lot of people remember him in that as well. So because he was well known in the 70s by this time. Oh, we forgot Sandcastles. That's where I first saw him in Sandcastles, and he played the ghost of a young man who was killed in a car accident, and he haunts his girlfriend. This was one of the first movies that I saw him in which I thought he was the most gorgeous actor I had ever seen in my life. He was cast as Stringfellow Hawk in the hit TV series Airwolf. And this was a mega hit series, and it appealed to a demographic that hadn't theretofore been really paid attention to, which was young men or adolescent boys. And they just loved this show. And he was a hero to these kids when they were growing up and watching Airwolf on TV. Unfortunately, he was out of control by the time he started filming Airwolf. He was out of control with drug use, intravenous, cocaine, pills, marijuana, you name it. He was doing it, in addition to being a raging alcoholic, because his father was an alcoholic as well, and alcoholism ran in his family. So, he was the highest paid actor at this time on television. I think he was making $200,000 a week or something, and that's a lot of money back in the 1980s. He had highest paid actor, but he couldn't keep it together. He went to rehab when the show was on hiatus. It didn't work. He was, at that time, he was charged with assault for assaulting a woman. He got out of that charge by saying that she accidentally slipped and fell. Okay. And he has numerous drunk driving charges. And by the time season 3 rolled around, he was barely able to function. And so Airwolf was essentially canceled because of his poor behavior, Anyway, So he staggered on into the 90s, but he had such a bad reputation by this point that really nobody would hire him. His second wife divorced him in 1996 and accused him of domestic violence. And she had to take out a restraining order on him. He was involved in 3 serious car accidents in the 1990s, one which actually cracked the 3 vertebrates in his neck, and he could have been paralyzed. He had a very, very serious car accident in 1996, which he almost didn't survive, had a serious brain injury. In the year 2000, he failed to show up for his girlfriend was suing him for $334,000 because she said that he beat her so badly that she had a miscarriage. And the hearing was set for a certain date, and he didn't show up for that for whatever reason. And so the judge levied a fine on him because he didn't show up. There was no contest, and now he owed $334,000. And of course, he doesn't have that money because his career was in the tank basically by that time. He did make an indie film called The Ice Cream Man, which is actually pretty good. And but that's the only movie that I can think of that he made that was of any consequence at that time. By this time, he had damaged his heart with all the alcohol and drugs, and he developed peripheral artery disease, which got worse and worse. So, by the time of the 2000s, the 2010s, he had to have his leg amputated in 2012 because the poor circulation due to peripheral artery disease. And he did come clean to that, but not until 2 years after the fact. And during this interview, he also, when they asked him about the horrible accident in 1996, he claimed to have no memory of this accident. So he was having some definite struggles at this time. And he was a far cry from his former gorgeous self. He was gaunt. He was he couldn't see properly. He was struggling to talk. But the interesting thing was that towards the end, he would talk to anybody who would listen about his glory days. He was very proud of his film work, and he wasn't sorry about his choices. So, didn't come as a surprise that he died, on February 10th, cardiac arrest due to the peripheral artery disease. The interesting thing about his death is that even though he died on February 10th, nobody found out about it until almost a month later. On March 8th was when TMZ finally broke the story that he was dead, forcing his publicist to come out and give a statement. So I find that interesting. Why keep that a secret? Yeah, a lot of people remembered him, so I'm just kind of not sure why that was kept as a secret. And there was no word on where he was buried or the funeral services or anything. He left behind his third wife, Patricia Ann Christ, and his daughter, Amber Vincent. So that's the sad story of Jan Michael Vincent. He was 74 when he died. It's not that young, and I'm actually surprised he did live that long. But that's the story of Jan Michael Vincent, the star of the week. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it so that I can continue to grow my channel and do this kind of content for you. Again, I'm going to pitch my books. You know how. Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead. Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead. And my book, Goodbye, Angel, Goodbye. Jan Michael Vincent will actually be in my third book, which is due out in the fall. And this book is going to be called Forever Tragic Hollywood. So thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you buy the books. Please check me out on Facebook, Tragic Hollywood, and please check me out on Patreon and also on Instagram. All right, thank you. See you next week.